kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. Tide is high, but I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I wanna be your number
Welcome to the Fourth Branch program. Glad you can make it. I am MD. This program is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Stay tuned as we begin the discussion of a very important, interesting, and enlightening topic. Hope to hear from you soon. Happy listening. Hello everyone, I am FD and this is the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. Welcome. Today we have a very special program. We continue with the conversation about the race to 2020. Today we will feature another Democrat candidate, John Hickenlooper. We will also take a look at the statement that William Barr made today. What exactly he wishes to achieve. And we'll take a quick detour and asking the question, is anyone above stupidity in America? That and much more when we return. I am MD, host of the Fourth Branch program, inviting you to join me every Saturday at 10:30 a.m. and every weekday at 2 p.m. for discussions of social political issues and to dissect the meaning and the importance of current events as well as to understand topics of legislations. The Fourth Branch Project is not associated with any political party, and we at the Fourth Branch do not have any political agenda or aspiration. Our ultimate objective is to work towards achieving a more perfect union by removing ignorance, the biggest obstacle to our democracy. Stay with us. We will be right back. Today we will continue the conversation about the race to 2020. several candidates, well over a dozen now, in the Democrat side, who vie to unseat Donald Trump from the Oval Office. But today, as I mentioned, we'll take a quick detour. We wanted to ask the question, is anyone in America above stupidity? Now, you've heard the expression, most likely, about no one in America is above the law. But the expression, anyone above stupidity, has not yet been used. But today we present you an interesting case in which we will take a look at not just asking the question, but pointing fingers to those individuals you would never imagine is indeed above stupidity. The picture you're looking at on your screen is that of Lori Loughlin. She's an actress in Full House. Now, when we ask the question, who in America is above stupidity, we're not referring to Lori. Now, she made, like other parents, 15 according to an article that was published. Parents were indicted yesterday on money laundering and connection charge connected to a college scheme, cheating scandal, which implicated dozens of wealthy individuals, coaches, college administrators across the nation. Now, you heard that before, and it's pretty much been on the in the public arena that celebrities, rich parents who bribe institution, Ivy League institution, in order to get their children in those schools. Now, no one says that those parents, what they did was right. In fact, I would be the first one to tell you that it was bad decision, but it, of course, from a legal perspective, it probably was a crime. But when I read the article that Lori and others involved could face up to 40 years in jail, that's when I realized that it is not only ridiculous, but it is stupid. The highest level of stupidity by individual. We expect to have great judgment, but instead those are the individuals who are making decisions that clearly tell us that it seems no one in America is above stupidity. And no, I'm not referring to Lori. Once again, I'm referring to the justice system. Here we have this inclination to say that that's probably why we have this emblem, this picture of a lady blindfolded with the balance, supposedly the balance, the justice. She doesn't see, she cannot see everything. Everyone is treated fairly. Now we know that's not true. We know that's bogus here in America. I'm not sure where it is, but we're talking about America. So maybe it should be, well, we should remove the blindfold, because if indeed we're talking about those individuals who paid for the kids, for the children to go to Ivy League school, of course, they bribe those individuals in a sense to go to Ivy League school. And if we're talking about sending those individuals to jail for up to 40 years, then it is time we as a nation demand that we remove the blindfold our justice system has, because clearly it's not saying properly. Now, I don't know Lori. I have no contact with her or any of the other individuals involved in this scandal, but common sense would tell you that it is really ridiculous for our justice system to see the correct punishment is to send those people to jail. Now, here's the reason I have a problem with that. You may recall that I did talk about the Jussie Smollett case as well, and I thought it was even more ridiculous for the Chicago Police Department to try to get that gentleman in jail. Now, those people, nobody can argue that that was bad taste and that was bad decision on their parts. Nobody would argue that. Even they would not argue that. Because in hindsight, it is pretty obvious that the decision that they made was not just bad parenting, but it was also bad for the children, because by paying the children ways into Ivy League school, they never gave the children the opportunity to make effort in order to make it on their own. So that was bad parenting, bad decision. We agree on that, and there is no one that can come and offer a different aspect of their decision. Why? Because most parents try to provide for the children, and most parents would like to make things a little bit easier for their children. So Lori, as a parent, just like all the other individuals who got caught up on this scandal, especially those at the end paying for the children to go to Ivy League school, they got caught up in helping their children not only get good education, but also get it from a reputable school. Because we already know here in the United States, if you walk away with a degree from Harvard, from Yale, from Princeton, from Stanford, all those are pretty much open for you, because those are Ivy League schools with great reputation. So as parents who have means, it's understandable that they look at it from the perspective, if I can pay my kids if I can pay a way for my children to go to the school, why not? That is the aspect, the bad decision aspect of things. Of course, Lori and all other parents could have paid for tutoring, could have paid for instructors to give their children better grasp of topics wherever they feel that they're not comfortable, in order to be able to apply and actually get admitted to those Ivy League schools. But instead, of course, bad decision, bad judgment, they decided to take the quickest way out of the situation. Again, I'm not here to say that it was okay, but what I find really absolutely ridiculous is the fact that we have a justice system which seems to think that to put those people in jail is the ultimate justice for our society. How ironic. Now, Lori and all those other people, they do have a job. They're making money. In fact, that's how they were able to pay that type of money in order to try to get their children into Ivy League school. Now, the scandal aside, it defies logic that you would take a dozen or so people who are making good amount of money or have a better than average lifestyle because they have the money, they have the means, and you would take those people, deprive them of the ability to make money, deprive them of the ability to be important citizen of our society, meaning they contribute to the economy, and you take those people, that's our justice system, taking those people, prevent them from making money and throw them in jail and send the bill to us, the taxpayers. Because obviously when someone is in jail, we, the taxpayer, we have to foot up the bill. That's beyond stupidity. Now, they did something wrong. Of course, there got to be some form of punishment in order to prevent others from following those footsteps. Because if someone does something wrong and that individual is not punished, then it becomes that, well, we all can do it. But putting those people in jail doesn't make any sense. In fact, it is the worst stupidity that a system of justice would use. So, speculation here is Lori, who used to make $1 million per year, 30-40% of that money paid as taxes. Now, with this type of judgment from our justice system, Lori would no longer make that money, would instead be put in jail, and instead of the country benefiting of the taxes that she was paying on her income, now we, the taxpayer, are sent a bill to take care of Lori while she sits in jail. Now, Lori is obviously not a threat to our society. Yes, she did commit a crime. In fact, personally, I have a different way of looking at those type of sins, calling it crime, meaning that there is a need to punish the person like any other criminal. That wasn't a crime that harm or hurt anyone except themselves. Just like what Justice Smollett did, the only person that got hurt was him. And yet our justice system decided, you know what, we just have to punish those people and teach them a lesson. Who in America is above stupidity? Yes, they had bad judgment. They made bad decision. But it is time that we as a society get to have a say over those things and say, yes, I understand some people saying that rich people, they have it all, they can buy admission for their children and so on and so forth. I understand the anger, but it is not a crime against society. The crime is actually against themselves. They the one who to a large extent will pay the price, because if you think about it clearly, their inability to be admitted to an Ivy League school says a lot about that individual. The very judgment that they made to buy the way into the school say a lot. But our society cannot continue to pay for it by putting them in jail when they present no danger, no threat to our society. As such, it is my hope that we in our justice system removes that blindfold that prevent those making the decision to see clearly that this is not a punishment for individuals who represent no threat to our society. A different type of punishment is needed. But the tax bill, please hold that. This is unbecoming. At the top of the program, I mentioned that today we will take a look at another candidate for the presidency of the United States. We will look at John Hickenlooper, who also threw his hat into the ring, hoping to become the Democrat nominee. The race is already heated. Just this week, or between the end of last week and this week, there are two other candidates, Democrat that is, who have joined the rank of those seeking to become the Democrat nominee to take on Donald Trump for the presidency of the United States. We will take a look at John, just like we did for the other two we already talked about. We talked about Andrew Young, that was on Monday, and yesterday we did talk about Jay Inslee, as candidate for the presidency of the United States. Today, let's take a look at John Hickenlooper, who too wants to be number one. I'll be right back. Who is John Hickenlooper? John was the 42nd governor of Colorado. He served 8 years from January 2011 to January 2019. Also, he was the chair of the National Governors Association from July 2014 to July 2015. prior to that, he spent 8 years as mayor of Denver from 2003 to 2011. Now, John, his full name is John Wright Hickenlooper Jr. He was born February of 1952 in Pennsylvania. He was first married to Helen from 2002, and in 2015 he got a divorce. They were divorced. And in 2016 he married Robin Pringle, and he has one son, a child. John went to Wesleyan University, and there he got a Bachelor of Arts, and he also got a Master of Science. The website you can find information about John's candidacy for the presidency of the United States is Hickenlooper.com. That's his last name.com, fully spelled out. So, what is it that John wants to do for the nation? What is he bringing? What is his beef? Well, John Hickenlooper was, I would say, was not a name that people knew much about. I didn't know that name until he threw his hat into the ring for the presidency of the United States. As I mentioned earlier, he was two-term governor until January 2018. John is 67 years old. He was born in Pennsylvania, went to Wesleyan University, and he made the announcement that he too would seek the presidency of the United States on March 4th, 2019, just a month ago. Now, in addition to the governor of Colorado, the mayor of Denver, John was also a restaurant owner, and he also had a brewery. John is a geologist as well. He has a number of issues that, of course, just like all other candidates, they don't just have one thing that they're interested in addressing in the nation, but they do have many other topics that they would like to talk about. John, for instance, is like most Democrats, he would very much like to have a requirement for a background check requirement for all gun sales, and he would want a ban on high capacity magazines. Just a side note that we are currently preparing an expose about gun based on someone who asked us to talk about that. John did create an exchange in Colorado for the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare that is. And he also did opt to expand Medicaid. He is, according to him, he is a pro-business person. He wants to slim down all the regulatory tongue twisting issues here. He wants to slim down all the regulation about that would prevent businesses from striving. In other words, he wants to unbound the businesses so that they can become profitable. John also supports the idea of Medicare for all. Now, you may remember or you may recall that that particular idea was being floated around by some of the candidates now vying for the post of the presidency, and John seems to be one of those such individuals. Now, he is what John considers as his, each candidate seems to who throw his or her hat in the ring to be the Democrat nominee. Each one of those candidates has a specific issue that they consider as their number one. Remember, during the 2012 presidential race, Mitt Romney, well, all the Republicans, but Mitt Romney was the nominee, and his number one issue was to repeal and replace Obamacare. So each candidate always brings something to the forefront in order to woo their constituent, to woo the voters and say, see, this is the topic, this is my priority, and if you elect me, if you vote for me, and if you push me to the finish line, that particular issue, I'm going to make it my priority. Now, John has been in politics for 16 years. And the major issue that he considered important to him to address, and like Mitt Romney said when during the race, that on day one I'm going to repeal and replace Obamacare. Now, John, on day one, he would cut red tape to reduce the cost of doing business and increase compliance with regulation. Now, that is his priority. Now, although we're not yet trying to decide based on what each candidate uses as the priority, we have not yet decided who would make it to the finish line. We have not yet talked about which of those priority would make more sense and which can get a lot of people behind those candidates. But I have a suspicion that cutting red tape is more a buzzword, is more a soundbite than it is a theme to rally support. I don't know if that makes sense, but I am unable at this point to visualize an individual on the campaign trail and promoting cutting red tape as a platform to rally support, to cheer people and get those individuals to actually get excited enough to vote for you in order to push you further into the process. That's just an opinion, but we are simply looking at the various aspects of priorities by each candidate in order to understand what exactly, how they're going to run their campaign in order to get to the finishing line. All I'm saying at this point, that promoting cutting red tape for businesses as priority for a campaign doesn't seem to be a topic that would be so exciting that people would be really pushing forward to get that individual to the finish line. Now, we're not discarding the fact that Hickenlooper could manage to rally a lot of support by explaining not only the cutting of the red tape, but also by addressing the other issues that the country faces today. So there is always a possibility that he may push aside or put aside this priority that he has and work on those other issues, those other more important issues that impact more people than just businesses, and use those to rally support. So I'm sure that is not in this fight just for the sake of saying I'm gonna cut red tape and that's where everything stops. So we're watching very closely what Mr. Hickenlooper is doing in terms of trying to rally support in order to become the Democrat nominee to take on Donald Trump.
After reading several books based on presidents and on Obama specifically, I found that they're typically partisan. The Obama legacy targets the heart of the issue by giving credit to the president where it's due, but definitely coming down hard on Obama on his bigger failures, like his handling of the Syrian crisis.
If you are in college, going to college, you are an educator, a faculty member, or someone with interest in government or politics, The Obama Legacy is definitely a book to read.
My professor recommended The Obama Legacy.
A friend actually recommended The Obama Legacy.
I would highly recommend this book for anyone, whether for academic use or leisure reading.
I would recommend this book to anyone out there searching for an impartial and unbiased look into Barack Obama's tenure as president.
I would definitely recommend this book as a good read for both liberals and conservatives.
The United States of America has been going through tumultuous time, especially the past 2 years has been off the chart. Usually, when we go to the poll and cast our vote for an individual who would become the next president of the United States, regardless of which individual we pick, regardless of which party wins, except for those who are on the fringe, we all, as American citizens, expect the president, that individual, to address the issues which are of concern to the American people. And it does not matter whether the president is a Democrat or a Republican. That individual becomes the president of the United States, not the president of the Republican Party. As such, we always expect that individual to do good by the country, not just by a party. The 2016, however, has made things very different. The country has watched for the first 2 years powerlessly the Republican Party destroying our institution, destroying the fabric of our society, and explaining it away, all the while dragging the constituent to become dumber, because there is only one way that politicians in general, Republicans in particular, have found the secret of staying in office forever. And the secret is not in solving problems. And that's the tragedy in the United States of America. Now, as I mentioned, politicians in general, and Republicans in particular, they have found that the way for them to stay in office is by doing absolutely nothing and stoking constituents to be upset about the other side. For the past 6-7 decades, could be a little bit more, actually it could be almost a century now, Republicans have always found a way to do absolutely nothing for the constituent, and yet always manage to get elected, re-elected by those same constituents. Now, Marcus Cicero, a Roman philosopher in 63 BC, said that any man can make mistake, but only an idiot will persist in his error. In other words, it would be understandable to vote someone in office that we may not know that that individual was not going to do anything for us, but once that individual is in office and we realize that the individual could not care less about our concern, could not care less about our problem, then that individual should not have any opportunity to stay in office in the succeeding election. And yet, that's not what happened. In Washington, most individuals, most legislators in Washington have been there for decades. Mitch McConnell is almost like a fixture in Washington. And yet, it is without doubt that most of what Mitch McConnell has done, and I'm going to provide you a few examples shortly, have been against the well-being, against the interest of the constituent. It is baffling because how do you explain supporting someone who continue to do absolutely nothing for you, but even worse, who continues to pass legislation that actually detrimental to you? Whenever I have a conversation with my fellow Republicans, it's always fascinating, to say the least, to hear the rationale provided in order to continue to vote the same individuals who has accomplished absolutely nothing for them back in office. I remember when I was debating, when I was presenting the series Are Republicans Dumber Than Democrats, there was a lot of backlash, a lot of shrug off, a lot of, hey, I don't know what I'm talking about, or it's a damn liberal talking. The list went on and on. But examples, facts, prove me absolutely right. Then again, not me, because I wasn't the one who came up with the scientific proof that indeed it's true that most Republicans are dumber than Democrats. Now, there is a reason for that, and if you're interested, I would very much suggest that you take a look at the People Branch YouTube channel. That's where we have all the videos archived. You can browse through, or you can search for that particular headline, Are Republicans Dumber Than Democrats? And there you will find there are at least 8 hours of video on that very topic. Now, the purpose of this program here is really to remove the biggest obstacle that make it impossible for the citizen of the country to join forces, Democrat and Republican, in order to decide that the country is more important than a party. Because the politicians have found a way to keep the constituent divided in their vote. It is brilliant for the politician, but it's detrimental for the country. It's detrimental for constituent, because as long as the constituent continue to divide, to get to fight one another, the politicians win. They don't have to do anything. And although this is something that's done by both sides, but Republicans have become what I call master of deception. They are extremely genius when it comes to that. They've always found a way to deceive their constituent, to make them believe certain things. And once they get that, and the way that they do that is messaging. And also, fortunately for them, they have a propaganda machine that amplifies the message. No matter which lies that they bring forth, it's amplified at Fox, and all the Republicans use that as their rationale for doing anything beyond that conversation. For instance, you may recall that when George W. Bush went to Iraq, the marching order was, well, Iraq had weapons of mass destruction. And guess what? Every single Republican repeated that over and over and over. And if you go to Fox, and if you went to Fox, that's the only thing you heard. And as such, all the Republicans rally behind the idea that yes, the war justified. And we know that wasn't true. And Republicans have become so good at that even those people who are being deceived don't even realize that they are being deceived. Now, when it is difficult, somewhat difficult, for the Republican legislature to deceive, they use what I call the scare tactic. So they come up with all kind of scary thing. Like now, today, if you've been following the 2020 race, you already start hearing Republican accusing Democrat of socialism. That's already the scaring approach, the scary tactic, already in full-fledged, not only with Republican legislators in Washington, but the propaganda machine also already has that in full force, warning people of socialism. So they have the deception as their first tool, and they have the scare tactic as their second tool. And as long as they continue to use those tools, they continue to scare their constituent, their job is secured in Washington. No question asked. You may recall, for instance, that when the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act was passed, aka Obamacare, was being debated, Republicans brought a list of scared tactics. First, they use deception because they tell their constituent a lot of lies about the policy, about the legislation. There were a lot of lies. Everything that Republicans said about Obamacare was false. And it's not that they didn't know that, because as legislators, they had copy of the legislation in their hand. So they deceive their constituent. Master of deception. And once they realize that they've done enough deceiving, they turn into scaring the constituent. Obamacare is a death panel for grandma. Obamacare will kill jobs. And that's not something yesterday. That's something that Republicans have been doing for a century now. That's as far back as I went to try to find out how long Republicans have been playing this game with the country. Yes, it's been over a century. As I mentioned before, both political parties are inclined to use certain tools in order to stay in Washington. But Republicans have mastered that. They are mastered of deception, and they have mastered the art of scaring people away from the other side. They always find a monster to present. Today, the monster that's currently roaming the street of America is socialism. That's the monster the Republicans floating around to scare people and say, if you vote Democrat, you're going to have socialism. I explained it before. Let me quickly say it again. The idea of socialism becoming a structure of our government is as impossible as one day we humans will grow wings to fly. Because our form of government, unless we shred the Constitution, unless we do away with Congress, with the Senate, that is impossible. But this is the monster Republicans are using in order to scare people away, so that when you hear that socialism, my God, what is socialism? Has anyone ever asked the question? It's a buzzword. Nobody ever defines it, but it's a bad word. We don't want that. And that's the way Republican legislators manage to stay in Washington for decades. Deception and scare tactic. Why? It's because there is absolutely nothing for them to offer. Now let me give you a couple of examples quickly, because there is another topic that I wanted to touch on, is what William Barr said earlier in the hearing that tell me something is amiss. But let me give you a few examples quickly to show you how much Republicans have been working against the constituent every time they have a chance. We have an example nearby. We can go as far back as almost a century ago. Just in 2017, in February of 2017, Republicans borrowed $1.5 trillion and claimed it was a tax cut for the people. We know that wasn't true, because 83% of that money went to large corporations and wealthy individuals. And if that weren't enough, guess who they sent the bill to? Us, the taxpayers. So Republicans have a knack of working legislation that are detrimental to us. So they borrow that much money, they give most of it to large corporation and wealthy individual. They didn't even have the decency of having a way for those corporations to pay. No, they send the bill, the full bill, to us. Those corporations, the money that they receive, they can keep. But us, yes, we the taxpayers are responsible for that bill. While they saying all that, now guess what else Republicans are trying to do? They call it entitlement. Because whenever they bring that to the fore, it's easy to convince the Republican constituent, yes, I don't want people on welfare. I don't want to support people. I don't want lazy people to take advantage of me. That's the Republican way of not attending to the needs of the masses, but rather to give to those who already have. Now, most Republicans did not complain about $1 million and send you a bill. Nobody complained. And the reason is because, as I mentioned earlier, Republican legislators are good at messaging. So they call it a tax cut, so you don't complain. But it is a bill for us, the constituent. That's what it is, because the money went to corporation, but the bill comes to us. It's money that was borrowed, so it has to be paid back. But that money was given to large corporation, but the bill comes to us. The corporation don't have to pay a single penny back. We, the people, have to pay it. Is it good for us? Is it detrimental to us? Of course it is detrimental, because why are we responsible to pay for a bill for money that was borrowed that's given to large corporations? And at the same time, when you talk about helping people who are really in need, they call it entitlement, and as such say, we don't have the money, we cannot afford that. We don't like people on welfare. We don't like helping people who have needs. And they managed to convince the Republican constituent, yes, we should cut entitlement. So helping those who are in need is a problem because it's entitlement. But borrowing money to give to those who have is called a tax cut. We okay with that. The end result is actually the same. They borrow money to give to those who have, but helping those who are actually in need, who need help to get lifted off the ground. No, we cannot do that. We should cut their help because they in entitlement benefit. So when I said that Republicans work against the constituent, it's not just a word. There are plenty of examples. They were against Obamacare because, well, Obamacare will provide insurance to 20+ million more people who actually needed the insurance. No, we don't want that. Because why should we give insurance to people who cannot afford it? That's really, in a sense, that's as simple as it is. Republicans go against anything that benefits the masses. But when it comes to giving to those who already have, they are open to that. In 2001, for instance, the George W. Bush administration inherited a surplus. When Bill Clinton left, he left the country for the first time. We were not talking about debt. Bill Clinton left the United States of America with a surplus. In a matter of 1 year, the Bush administration squandered that in the form of tax cut. Do you remember how much you received? Not much. If you may not necessarily remember, because it was a very small amount, but the wealthy individual, the rich people, received a sizable amount of money. And we fall back into debt. Now we, the taxpayer, responsible for that. So when I mentioned that your Republican legislators, they use deception and scare tactic to put you like this against the Democrat, so that you continue to fight, you continue to vote for them, while they continue to do absolutely nothing for the country. But worse, they continue to burden the country. So when you hear debt because of Social Security, because of all those benefits, that's the language used by the Republicans in order to rally support from their constituent. But what they're not saying is, when they get the money to do the job, to really help the constituent, they take that money and give it to those who already have and send a bill to us. That's the state of affairs for the United States of America. When William Barr came for confirmation hearing, he made a number of statements about how he's going to be transparent, how he's going to work as the attorney for the country, not Donald Trump attorney. You remember that? Well, that's what he said. When the Mueller report was released, or passed rather, to the Justice Department, in a matter of a few hours, William Barr released a 4-page summary in which he tried to exonerate Donald Trump, saying that there was no collusion, and even in his mind, the way that he framed the letter, that there was no obstruction of justice. Now we know that William Barr is not a stupid individual, but so we can safely conclude that he did that because he wanted to make certain that the President of the United States has ammunition to use to say that it was all a witch hunt. Now, you may also recall that when William Barr released that letter, that 4-page letter, He even suggested that it was in collaboration with Robert Mueller and Rod Rosenstein. You may recall that. That's what he said. In fact, in the letter, he suggested exactly that. But yesterday, we found out he was under oath, so he couldn't keep up with the lies. So he said that when he offered Mueller to take a look at the letter, Mueller said, no, I don't want to. So he lies in the letter by saying that he wrote that full page in collaboration with Robert Mueller. What he was trying to say is, I came to the same conclusion Mueller did, and when he looked at the letter, he said, yes, that's exactly what I said. But in fact, yesterday, we found out that's not the case. And the reason William Barr did that is because, obviously, he wanted to create the very situation that the country is in today. Now, after he released that letter, obviously, he found himself in a predicament. And the predicament he found himself in is the fact that he realized what he had done. He committed a sin that everybody called on, that he shouldn't have done that. But he did. So today, he suggested that Trump may have been spied on. Now that's fodder for Donald Trump, fodder for Republicans, because Donald Trump has been talking about his campaign was spied on. Now, contrast that if you like. He's a guy who has a report. He doesn't have to go looking for information that clearly details what had happened, but he chose to say something different in his letter, in his 4-page letter. But he has not had a chance to see anything, any kind of investigation about Donald Trump, but he came out and blurted out publicly that he thinks Donald Trump may have been spied on. Now, if you're Donald Trump supporter, great news, because you wanted to hear that. If you're Donald Trump, fantastic news, because you wanted to hear that. If you're in Washington and you've been defending Donald Trump, this is great news from the Attorney General. But what just happened is the Attorney General putting oil to the fire in order to take the heat away from him, because he knew what he did was wrong. So by giving talking points and moving the spotlight away from him, putting it on somebody else, then he can continue to muddle the issues. Now, how is that for an attorney whose primary job is to the nation? Now, if you don't care about our institution, you don't care about what happened to rule of law, you don't care about people really collaborating with Donald Trump to continue to destroy our institution, this is great news for you today. To have an attorney general making a statement, an attorney general, and he doesn't have anything to back it up. Why do you think he made the statement? Now, he doesn't have anything to back up that statement. He made it, and yet the report that's in his hand that has all the necessary information to say yes, Donald Trump obstructed justice, he decided to do otherwise. Have you seen a pattern here? Now, for those who are claiming or who want to beat the drum that there is nothing, let me ask you the logical question. If that report, the Mueller's report, in fact finds no collusion and finds that Donald Trump did not obstruct justice, now why would you want to hide that? Why would you not want to put that out there to make sure that everybody in the nation, everybody in the world read that Robert Mueller, after 2 years, found Donald Trump exonerated? Why not? Isn't what we all want to hear? You see a problem with saying that there is no obstruction, but we're not going to show you the report? Now, if you're a supporter and if you're Donald Trump, hey, that's fine by you. I don't need to see the report, because as long as the Attorney General say I did not commit obstruction of justice, I'm fine with that. I don't need any report. Ironic, isn't it? You don't need any report because it's Donald Trump. But when James Comey said that Hillary Clinton was careless but did not commit any crime, Republicans forced the Department of Justice to turn in every single document. So James Comey's words weren't enough because it exonerated Hillary Clinton. But William Barr's words are enough because, well, it exonerated Donald Trump. But we shouldn't get the report. Republicans got every single document. Obviously, if there was something to find about Hillary Clinton, today we would have heard it, because they've been investigating Hillary Clinton for 8 years now. But William Barr wrote a 4-page report that says, Mueller didn't find any collusion, there was no obstruction of justice, but I'm not going to let you see that. You just have to take my word for it. You see the problem with that logic? William Barr is the Attorney General. He's no stupid man. So now he creates chaos, and it's not an accident. William Barr creates chaos because he meant to create the chaos. And that's the Republican way. Deception and scare tactic. Deception, scare tactic. So deception, they've been deceiving the country for 2 years. The scare tactic now is say, I think Donald Trump campaign may have been spied on. What do you have, Mr. Attorney General, as proof? An Attorney General coming to a hearing and making those statements and don't have anything to back it up. And yet, this is the United States of America. You have Republican legislators now collaborating with the executive branch in order to continue the erosion of our democracy. And they do that very well by pinning one party against the other. Amazing. Ignorance, they say, is the biggest threat to any democracy. Indeed, it is. Plato, a Greek philosopher born in 427 BC, said that ignorance is the root and stem of all evil. Today, members in the Republican Party wear ignorance as a badge of honor, while the rest of the country watch powerless the destruction of a country which was once the envy of the world. The media is the enemy of the country, said Donald Trump. The Democrat legislators are obstructionists for not going along with everything the president wants. The Department of Justice is biased for investigating corruption in the Trump administration. This is the United States of America. Any question? Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the people. Throughout history, dictators, authoritarians have always tried to delegitimize the media in order to get away with corruption, scandal, and yes, even abuse. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933, accusing the media of fabrication. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our only business is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent. It is necessary. It is critical. Our very freedom depends on it. As of our talking, while this conversation we're having is ongoing, in the courtroom, the Trump administration legal team is fighting to end Obamacare. Your health is on the ballot in 2020. Your health care is on the ballot in 2020. While Donald Trump publicly telling you that he's going to take care of you, he's going to have health care better than Obamacare, he's going to provide coverage for pre-existing conditions. When I mentioned earlier that Republicans thrive in deception, this is not just a word. While Donald Trump out there saying that, you may recall that during the 2018 midterm election, a lot of the Republicans were saying exactly the same thing, that if you re-elect them, they're gonna fight for those aspects of Obamacare that benefit you. We can say thank God that a number of you did not believe them, and you had every reason not to. Donald Trump has been, even as of a few weeks ago, telling you that he's going to have something, a coverage that has pre-existing condition. Now, if that's the case, if that were to be the case, why would his team today in the courtroom fighting not only to end Obamacare, but exclusively, specifically fighting to put an end to pre-existing condition? Now you talk about deception. sometimes I'm not certain that Republican constituents know how hard their representative work to deprive them of the least amount of benefit. They don't just not do, but they try to remove. They try really very hard. While Donald Trump has a crowd cheering him for promising that he's going to keep pre-existing conditions in court. It's not something he's saying he's going to do. It's something that's in court today. His team fighting, presenting to the court reason to put an end to Obamacare, or at the very least to put an end to the coverage of pre-existing conditions. How about that for deception? So the 2020 presidential election is not just another election and should not be. I remember in 2016 I screamed at the top of my lungs that Donald Trump is not worth the sacrifice of our nation. Nobody listened. It's like I was John the Baptist in the desert screaming. Today we seen exactly what I was afraid of. That we have a president who works diligently, systematically to destroy the fabric of our society, trample the rule of law, trash our Constitution. It is time that we as a nation recognize saving our country is much more important than sticking to our political party. If we care an iota about our children, our grandchildren, future generations, the 2020 election should be an easy exercise. The current administration has done everything to destroy what we as a nation get to like, and we cannot afford for that to continue. Today, the United States of America, and listen carefully, the United States of America is among the corrupt governments. The United States of America. Our government is okay that our citizens, our journalists are killed for corrupt reasons. Now, we are okay that the President of the United States is in bed with dictators, is in bed with other head of state, as long as that brings money to his pocket. We're okay with that. Yes, today the United States of America is among the corrupt governments in the world. How is that for an accomplishment? So when you see the candidate crisscrossing the nation, don't think of them as Democrat. Think of them as someone to help ouster Donald Trump from the Oval Office, because that's the only outcome the country needs in 2020. If you have questions, comment, suggestion, criticism, do not hesitate to send it our way. And should you have a topic you would like us to talk about, let us know. We will research it and we will debate it right here on the Fourth Branch program, the place for common sense. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon. The Fourth Branch podcast is brought to you in collaboration with the People Branch publication, which can be found on the People Branch website, located at peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org. That's peoplebranch.org website, in which you will find a number of very interesting articles. My name is Mike Duchesne, MD for short. I hope you have a great afternoon or a great evening, whichever it happens to be. Hopefully you can join me again next time for another interesting episode of this podcast. That was the Fourth Branch, live from New York. Good day.
kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who make love undercover. I'm just the kind of guy who will love you all over. And you're just the kind of girl who could watch me keel over. I wanna be your number one. The tide is high, but I